You may be thinking to yourself, I could never install a decoder on a non-DCC ready locomotive. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can do it, and it's actually pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Today we're not doing one, but two non-DCC ready decoder installs on two different locomotives. The two locos in question are a Pocketline Steeplecab, which is my current favorite budget N-scale locomotive right now, and an old lifelike Alco diesel. I do want to give a special shout out to Soundtraxx, who sent over these decoders for this project, and so far I'm loving not only these decoders, but every Soundtraxx decoder that I have used. You've seen me do the Blue Nami ones, you've seen me put in a Next 18 decoder in my Scale Trains locomotives. They are just flat out awesome. I love the fact that they're made right here in America, and they have extremely high quality sound files. And I mean, seriously, you're going to hear it in the one that I do the sound installation today. It's awesome. I have a link to their website in the description below if you want to check out all of their stuff. They make it really easy to do customization on your sounds as well. And I was able to customize the sound loco today to sound as prototypical as possible based on my research. This is the first locomotive we will be converting. This is a Pocketline Steeplecab. It is a super cool little engine and is highly affordable. I bought this one for under $40. The only issue is that they do not come DCC ready like the vast majority of Kato's other locomotives. And this is purely because of the size. They don't have a drop-in decoder that you can do with this. So we're going to have to convert it ourselves. For this conversion, we'll be using a Soundtraxx MC1Z1025Q mobile decoder. This loco literally has no space for a speaker, so we're not going to be adding sound to this one, although I might have to try this in the future. We pop off the shell, which reveals the chassis, which is identical to the Pocketline tram we converted a few weeks ago. That video will be linked at the end of this video. So we'll be using a similar process to attach the decoder. The main difference is that we will need to make space in the shell for the decoder. The tram didn't have that issue nearly as bad. And there is really not much room to spare, which means we're going to need to trim the decoder wires super short so that the excess wire doesn't take up a lot of space. We stripped down the loco to its bare chassis and motor, just the metal and the motor. Now, one thing I figured out about these Pocketline locos is that if the motor is not sitting absolutely perfectly, the worm gear will have some slippage when transferring motion to the wheels. This is what actually caused the issue with the tram. First, we need to remove the contact strips from the motor wires and solder the orange decoder wire to the red feeder and the gray decoder wire to the black feeder. Save these contact strips. We will be using them later, and it's going to make this install a lot easier. With DCC decoders, red and black wires connect to the track and orange and gray connect to the motor. We take the contact strips from the motor and solder them to our track pickup wires on the decoder. That's red and black. Red goes on the right track and black goes on the left track, so right side, left side. Once everything is soldered, I wrap the connections with Kapton tape. This is the most space-efficient way to cover up and seal your wires in like this. Now I can put the motor back in the chassis and put the cover over it. I did cut away part of the cover where it makes these sort of S springy shapes. These parts are actually what keep the motor in place, so only cut out what you have to with these. If you end up having some slippage, you can help set the motor back down by wedging some folded over Kapton tape between the cover and the motor. This is what I did with the tram, and it fixed everything. That's going to push the motor down into place. We pop the decoder through the hole we made, and we can slide the contact strips we connected to the decoder into their original slot where they will connect to the track power pickups. We can then reassemble the base of the chassis. We will hold off on the shell for now. Before we try to cram this decoder into this shell, we need to test it first and make sure that it works. And as you can see by this footage, it works brilliantly. Now for the fun part, cramming it into that tiny little shell. This shell is in two parts, luckily. The main body and then the window roof cab section that also has the pantograph that goes to any overhead wires. The decoder is going to have to stick out into the cab a little bit. It's simply not going to fit into the body part of the shell. So we need to cut some space for this to fit through. The cab top uses several clip points, so we just have to make sure not to cut those, and I'll be cutting using my rotary tool to cut between these two long lines and form a square hole. Once that is done, I can put the decoder through the gap. I then trim the excess wire from the lighting controls, leaving a little extra in case I decide to wire lights in this thing. I get the decoder as far down as it will go, and here's the moment of truth. I slide the cab portion on, and it fits! I did not know if that was going to work, if I'm going to be honest, and it's a really tight fit. Now, let's give this thing a little test run. Okay, that was fun, but I said I was doing 2 locomotives today. This is an old lifelike Alco FA unit. The motor works extremely well and it's got some serious pulling power. When we open it up, we can see how simple it is and actually how easy it is going to be to wire up. There's already feeders off of the trucks, which will make wiring to the track super easy. The only thing is the large weights that take up all of the cab space. Well, I have a solution for that, and it's a bit different. Before that, this is the decoder that I will be using, a Soundtraxx TSU N18 with the Alco sound files loaded. This is a Next 18 decoder, which means it uses the Next 18 connector. This is the same one that was on my scale trains locomotives and on any N-scale scale trains locomotives. So I'll be using a Next 18 quick plug adapter from Soundtraxx as well for this, along with one of their Sugar Cube speakers equipped with a baffle to amplify the sound. Now, how is all this gonna fit in this tiny space? I could try to cut into the weights, and I actually did try to cut into the weights, and I might be able to get the decoder to fit in there, but I'm definitely not getting a decoder and a speaker with a baffle in this locomotive body. So what am I gonna do? Well, a lot of older locomotives like these had B units that were empty dummy units, and this one's no exception. I bought this one specifically because it had that B unit, and I bought this off of eBay. I think I spent maybe $40 total on this. This B unit has no weights in it, and it was extremely light. So I decided that I would put all of the electronics in the B unit. This means that the loco and dummy would be permanently tied together, but that's really okay for this arrangement. I don't see a time where I'm going to take that dummy B unit and stick it somewhere else. I'm going to put the decoder, the adapter, and the speaker all in the B unit. There's plenty of space for it in there. And I'm going to run the necessary wires that need to go to the A unit, which is the power, through the 2 little doors that are in between. And they already have a small hole in them that represents a window, and I'm going to use my rotary tool to widen these holes, and then I'm going to feed the necessary wires from the B unit to the A unit. Now, I have the shells off to do this. You don't need to have them on the locomotive to do this. Now, once I have all the necessary wires fed, which is the motor pickup wires, the motor power wires, and the light wires for the headlight, I begin soldering them to the connection points on the locomotive. I solder each side's pickup wires together and attach them to the appropriate decoder wire, remembering red for the right side and black for the left. I then solder the orange wire to the top motor connection and the gray wire to the bottom motor connection. You will have to pop the motor out for this. And then I wrap them with Kapton tape to prevent short circuits. I've now done enough to where I can test the locomotive out. Okay, the locomotive works great. Now it's time for the lights and sound. Lights first. I'm using these little pre-wired LEDs for this, and I'll put a link for them below. With the wires I fed to the A unit, I wire a 1K resistor to the blue wire of the decoder, which is our common positive. I then attach the red wire of my LED to the blue wire of the decoder and the black wire of the LED to the white wire of the decoder, which is the front light negative wire. I then use a fair amount of super glue to hold that light in place because it's not going to stay in the original slot where the little grain of rice bulb was beforehand. Now I can wire up the speaker. It does not matter which side is positive or negative for the speaker, as long as the wires are correctly connected. Now, you won't see a wire coming out of the Next 18 adapter for the speakers. It actually has two pads for soldering the speakers on the opposite side from where you connect the decoder itself, and you just use those pads and solder some wires to it and then solder them to the speaker. I then reattach the baffle and cram all the electronics and wiring back into the locomotive. I use Kapton tape when I can to hold things in place to make it easier to get everything in properly. Now, before I ran this, I went ahead and customized the sounds for my decoder. Now, this was pretty easy. I just went into JMRI with the locomotive on my programming track and adjusted the CVs. How did I know which CVs to adjust? Well, Soundtraxx has great documentation, and I was able to look up which horn I want, which driver I want, and things like that, and customize everything for it, and then write it to the locomotive, and it worked like that. Now we can put it on the track and test it out. DCC installs on non-DCC ready locos do not need to be scary. With a little patience, this can be a big money saver for you. You can go on eBay or go to train shows and buy old locomotives and upgrade them to DCC without spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I do want to thank Soundtraxx for sending these decoders over. I really like them, and honestly, that old lifelike locomotive has become my best sounding loco because of this. They were also great with communication and me asking questions about doing these custom installs and figuring out the best products for me to use. So thank you so much, Soundtraxx, for helping all of this. I really hope this video helps you be a little bit more comfortable with doing custom DCC installs on this. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, and happy railroading.